Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Gabriela Flores from StillExcelsior.com. Here we have the very intelligent and beautiful Dr. Kate Balestrieri. I hope I said that like the Italian pronunciation because
It's beautiful.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Kate. How is everything? I'm so
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm so excited to be here talking with you. This is great.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So Dr. Kate, for those of you who don't know, is a licensed clinical and forensic psychology and also a certified sex addiction therapist. So we are about to end this incredible 2019, some of it good, some of it bad, some of it, all around across the table. So we're entering into a new year, a new decade, if you will. And what better way to enter a new year, but with talking about some awesome sex topics, right? So of course, I always am like, I want to be better. I want to improve. I want to be the best version of myself. So tell me, how did you get into your lifestyle about how helping women and helping couples and empowering them? How did you get into that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I get asked that a lot because people are like, that's a weird job to have, right? A sex therapist. How do you do that? Or what does that mean? And it took me a long time to get to this place in my career. Psychology in general is a second career for me. And historically, I was an insurance broker and put together employee benefit plans. I know I was in corporate America and honestly, I loved it. But I wanted to do something that gave me just a little bit more kind of meat to chew on in terms of the human condition. So I went back into school and finished all of the graduate courses needed and pursued a degree in psychology. And my first foray into the field really was specialized as a forensic psychologist. And in that role, I spent a lot of time working in different prison systems and within different court systems, evaluating high-risk sex offenders and non-sexually violent offenders as well, to assess for their amenability to treatment and any kinds of risks of recidivism upon their re-entry into the community should they get paroled. So it was fascinating work, and I got to learn all about the ways in which trauma impacts people and guides their decision-making process. And that's really what was so interesting to me about the field of psychology. Why do we do the things we do? And as I started getting deeper and deeper into that work, I started seeing a lot of themes around, questions about sexuality and a lot of themes between sex and anger and power. And I started recognizing the parallels that existed outside of the prison systems. So I started paying more attention to the little nuanced ways that sex and power got played out in people's relationships on TV, in the news, in the media, in my friends and family's relationships. They didn't really care for that part so much in my own. And, just really kind of looking at like, what role does sex play in people's lives? It seems so important behind bars. And sure enough, it was equally important, on this side of the prison wall. So I decided to take my practice more into a private practice setting and began working with individuals and couples, really understanding the role that trauma played in the development of their personalities, how they engaged in being in a relationship. That was really important to me to understand. And then, of course, their sexual vitality and helping people move from a place in their lives where sex was something that was painful or caused shame or gave them problems in life to something that not only had felt healing, but that they really felt they could step into their fullest potential and be excited about without shame and, really find connection, pleasure, spontaneity, and fun, which is really a lot of what sex is about, if you're doing it right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that is so true. Well, first of all, let me just first and foremost say thank you for doing that and following your soul's purpose to do that, because I think you're right. There is a lot of misconceptions between trauma and how trauma defines us, how it changes us, how it really just keeps us, away from our authentic selves.
Yes.
So I love that you do that. Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
Because trauma is such a very interesting thing, and I'm sure everyone at some point has experienced it. So I have a sort of, you mentioned about stepping into your fun, empowered, sort of that goddess energy, right? Or even God
Mm-hmm.
energy for the male, right? What exactly happens? Is trauma sort of something that, I mean, obviously it's something that's done physically and it's also done something
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, but how does one sort of rebuild, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rebuild back that place of like, I can still be a free sort of my authentic sexual being, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time still be able to respect within the boundaries of everything that happened to me.
Well, first, I think it's important to define trauma because trauma is a very subjective term, and what might be traumatic for one person might be insignificant to another, and vice versa. So, that's, I think, the first step here in this conversation because many times people who endure a traumatic event or something they feel is traumatic, they don't often get validation that it is as traumatic as it felt for them. And that can create an initial sort of dampening down of their spirit, in addition to the impact of the trauma on them in the first place. And so, what I find is that it's important to work with people to really understand the role that the trauma has played in their lives and to move away from a place of comparison or needing validation from other people in order to feel justified to have the emotions that they have about it and the impact that they have had above it or about it, excuse me. So I think that's really key first. And so the way that I work with people is to really look at how every domain of their life has been impacted by something that has been overwhelming or traumatizing, and where it has caused ripple effects that leave, gaps in their vitality or, holes in where they once felt full. And so we start to just kind of look at what would be required to shape shift that gap or that hole or that missing piece or that part that hurts into something that feels okay and stable. And when somebody is able to take steps toward doing that, they notice that the other domains of their life start to shape shift as well, because we are holistic creatures, and what happens over here in our life impacts us over here. But oftentimes, as a society in general, we compartmentalize our lives tremendously. So when someone experiences a traumatic event, oftentimes as a survival mechanism, their brain will encourage compartmentalization unconsciously. And so people tend to even get more kind of truncated into these different areas of their lives, forgetting that even though our brain might not tell us that those things are connected, they are, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we have to look at our humanity as a whole first. And once we can start looking at that and sort of piecing together things like different boundaries, things like safety strategies, things like coping skills, and self-care practices. And when I say self-care practices, a lot of people think that means like, oh, manicures and massages, and sometimes that does include it does include those things. But really, when I think about self-care, I think about things like setting yourself up for success for the next day, thinking forward about the things you want to eat and how you want to nourish yourself, how you want to spend your time, giving yourself enough time to get through the day so that you're not rushing and feeling chaotic. And when we have a traumatic event, oftentimes the building blocks that we've established to feeling that grounded just get knocked all over. And so a lot of the rebuild is about recognizing, okay, where do things feel wonky? What is in my control? Where can I get support? And, can I give myself compassion and love while it's imperfectly coming back together? And then once people get there and they realize, like, okay, I'm kind of feeling like myself again, or I'm almost there, and I start seeing the light come back in their eyes and they start taking on the world and really, moving from that place of pain to a restored baseline and then to vitality and potential fulfillment. And that's just such a beautiful process.
That sounds absolutely amazing in the whole
Mhm.
process, because it's like you go from like this sort of, what it sounds like is trauma is like kind of like the it's like, okay, I'm going to take the map, right? I'm going to take the
Mhm.
map from you, I'm going to leave you in the dark, and now you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
you're sort of left there like not knowing, and then you're basically learning what feels safe again. And that's the
Yeah.
process of, like what you said, which I thought was so beautiful, is that self-care. I never thought of it in that way, that self-care is really just a coming back to yourself, right? It's
Yeah.
just like what feels good, not
Hmm.
just these external things, but the really internal things. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay. How about when, first of all, you're absolutely stunning, right? So
Oh,
I'm
you're
sure
very
you
sweet.
don't, absolutely. So I'm sure you don't, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but my viewers, some viewers of mine have sort of, they're a little self-conscious about
Mm.
their bodies, right? We live in a
Mm.
world where we are obsessed with being perfect. We really are.
Mm.
We want to look perfect. We want to feel
Hmm.
perfect. We even want to like promote ourselves as perfect, right?
Yeah.
But
Well,
we're
yeah.
not. Yeah, it's like
No.
we're not. It's not happening. But
Hmm.
so I feel that sometimes how can we love ourselves, right? We're in the topic
Mm.
of self-love. How can we love ourselves, love our bodies more so
Mm.
that we can have better sex, and
Yeah.
how can we like become less self-conscious about our imperfections? Because I will always see like movies and things like that, and I see people and I'm like, they're not perfect, but yet,
No.
but because they're on the TV, in my mind I'm like, they're perfect because
Right.
the
Right.
TV is administering them. It's so weird how like we're just like, programmed that way. So then I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, when you're going to go and have sex, you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to say,
Hmm.
look, there's something about an area in my body that I'm not, like, I wish it was in a magazine, but it's not.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and I'm sure that your significant other is feeling just ready to just, let's just enjoy ourselves and be, right? Be part of this
Yeah.
process. But you're
Yeah.
so in your head. You're so in your head about
Hmm.
it that you
Hmm.
almost feel like, no, I should be even more conservative and hide this part and hide this part.
Mm.
So how can we love ourselves more so that we can be able to be more open to that love, to that intimacy?
Yeah, but such a good question. And I wish there were one simple answer, but I think there are a lot of different elements that go into that. First, we live in a culture that does emphasize beauty, but we also live in a culture that is shifting and, you know, normalizing the reality that beauty comes in so many different shapes, sizes, colors, styles. And I think that's amazing. And just because we have ascribed or somebody ascribes perfection or beauty to look like XYZ, this person over here is not everyone's cup of tea. And every person on the planet is valued and found beautiful for different things. So it doesn't really matter if you have six-pack abs or the perfect Brazilian butt or your eyebrows are freshly groomed or any of that. Like, it doesn't matter because we are all humans and we are all wildly imperfect. And I think the more we just own that in our own skin, whether you choose to make augments or not to the way you look, irrelevant, but whatever you've got going on for you, work with it, own it, love it, and other people will too. Because what people see is less about the physical characteristics and more about how we feel embodied in ourselves and what we do with those physical characteristics. And so it's about exuding the love and the confidence. Now, that can be tough if you're not okay with what's going on in your own skin. So, what I often will recommend is some reality checking and like real deep conversations about how did you develop the vocabulary and the conversations that you have in your mind about what you look like? Where did those messages come from? And if you could learn new messages, what would you have instilled differently? What would you have wanted to hear? And I know this is really challenging, especially for a lot of women. We hear our moms talking about their bodies. And
I was just gonna say, well, the first thing you said, where did we get this from? Like, mom? Like, that's the
yes,
first thing that came into my head. Yeah.
yes, yes. And I think unknowingly, a lot of moms, will talk about their bodies in ways that it's just about them feeling insecure or not feeling okay in that moment or just being silly and irreverent. But as little women, little girls, we just soak all that
We're
up and we
sponges. Yeah.
yeah, and it becomes not only how we see, the dynamics in our sort of mother-daughter relationships, but the way our mother interacts with her body sets the stage for us implicitly to understand how we should see our own bodies. And so when I start working with women around that, and we really start breaking down, do you really hate your thighs, or did your mom hate her thighs? Right? Or, did you really feel self-conscious about wearing glasses, or did someone at school make fun of you about
Right.
that?
Absolutely.
And so we really start challenging that and working on replacing a lot of negative I statements with positive ones, and emphasizing value and worth outside of what our physical appearance is.
That's beautiful.
We all get old, and no matter how much plastic
I
surgery
know.
someone has, it's just not going to save the train wreck that is gravity. So let's embrace it and love ourselves.
Yes, amen. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of deals with like the outside aspect. Now, what happens, right, when, let's say, by nature, you have a case where we're gonna say the case, you have a woman or a man, right? They're just more prone to being more sexually open, if you will. They would be considered on the very top level of like, all right, that's definitely what you're into. So we're going back to society stuff, right? Society standards. So now let's say, and I've seen this with a lot of my clients, they get into relationships, and as soon as they get into a serious relationship, they before the relationship, they were these open, sexually liberated women. They get into the serious relationship, they become these conservative sexual women, right?
So, what does that mean? Conservative sexual women.
So
how are you breaking that down?
Yeah. So let me kind of jump into that. Okay. So, all right. So beforehand, they're more like, they're not thinking. They're not in their head, right? We're talking about before the relationship. They're just like, I'm free. I'm open. I'm exploring. I'm dirty talking. I'm saying, whatever, what have you. And then they get into the relationship, and then they're like, okay, no more dirty talk. Okay. We can't do that. We can't be so much about that because, we don't want judgment. We don't want judgment from him because I want to get married one day. And if I show him that I'm this very sexually free, liberated woman, there's a lot of stigmas about like certain things like pornography. Oh, it's bad for you. But what if there's some people that enjoy it, like women, and it's like, oh, okay, I enjoy this, but I'm not supposed to because I'm supposed to be your soon-to-be wife. I want you to take me seriously. So I feel that. So why do you think that is, that certain women sometimes feel like they have to sort of repress that of like certain parts of them because they're afraid that their significant other may be insecure about them not meeting that certain level sexually?
That feels like 6 questions in one, and I love it.
It's totally 6
Okay, well, a couple of thoughts. First, I think that we as a culture have stigmatized sexuality and femininity into these bifurcated Madonna and whore polarities, right? So we have this idea that women who are sexual are disposable, and women who are someone that we want to keep in a relationship with for a long period of time, they can't be sexual because that's dirty, right? And so I think that we have this expectation that good girls are prudish and bad girls, the ones we like to play with and the ones we like to be when we're not in relationships, are not for long term. And this is old and antiquated thinking, and it's really inherently very sexist and degrades both genders and really anyone who is somewhere in between on the continuum of gender, because it doesn't even acknowledge them. Right? So it's a really pernicious and old story that as a culture we have been regurgitating century after century after century. Now, we're lucky that we live in almost 2020, and we are very dynamic, and we're talking about these things as a community and asking questions about, well, why and why not? Why is this okay? Why is this not? Why is that okay and that not? And I think what is our task right now as evolved humans is to say, again, how did I develop these messages? And what is really important to me about being in a relationship? And why wouldn't it be okay to have awesome, raunchy, dirty talk, including sex, with your partner for life? I mean, the partners that I work with who are the happiest are the ones who are the most exploratory sexually and emotionally, and willing to challenge old beliefs that they came into the relationship with, because it gives them a new footing upon which to bond. And that's exciting. And that leads to arousal and liberation. So it's great. And oftentimes, I work with a lot of couples who have ideas about who they should be when they get married. And that means leaving behind this like fun, freaky part of their sexual forte that they, attribute to only single people do that. Or when I get married, I have to take my husband or my wife seriously. Now we're going to be serious people, and we're going to have kids and have the jobs and make the house and go to work and do the things, right? And that's great. You can do all those things and still be freaks in bed. And you're probably, and you're probably going to like each other a whole lot more, right? If in fact that's what one or both of you is into. But I think a lot of people are afraid of being shamed because they have been shamed, and they're afraid of what happens when their sexual interests bump up against the value systems that they've been raised in. And I think we have to really look long and hard about how do things like religion, geography, our gender identification, and our choices of work influence the way people see us and how we see ourselves, and then the expectations that we feel are incumbent upon us sexually. Because I think a lot of men are trapped in this cycle as well, but theirs is a cycle of they have to be sexually virile. They have to have as many partners as is possible. They have to get women to want to do all these different things, even if they don't want to do all these different things with them. I work with a lot of men who are feeling pressure to be, porn stars, and they don't even know what that means. Right. And it's not particularly rewarding for them, but, they esteem themselves by how much sexual success they've had. So then when they settle down, they feel like, some of them are very relieved, like, whew, I can settle down and be with one person now and like actually be intimate. But many men feel like a part of their masculinity dies because now they don't have this opportunity to esteem themselves as, a verifiable man, if you will. So I think it's a dangerous trap that we're in societally, and we really need to be talking about it more openly.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to talk about it because, a lot of us experience it, like you said, men and women. So I have another question for a man. This is a question from a man. He said, haven't had sex in a long time meaning over 2 years. How do you control premature ejaculation or from coming quickly, when you start having sex again?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes that's just to be expected if it's been a long time and, you're just getting back into the game. So I wouldn't be too worried about it if it happens the first few times, but if it starts to become something that is regular after that, there are different hold techniques that you can use with the penis to delay arousal. I find that really working with pelvic floor muscles can help strengthen your ability to hold an erection, to work with, orgasmic potential, and, really slowing down and getting in sync with your breath and your own arousal pattern so that you recognize when you can intervene sooner to extend your erection and prolong orgasm.
That's amazing. That sounds like, that's interesting. That sounds like something that leads me to my next question, which is how can you find ways to be more in the moment when you're going to orgasm with your partner? Because, I feel like both men and women, we often, like, men are basically like, okay, I don't want to finish too quick because I'm going to be judged on my performance. And a woman is like, well, I have to think about some other stuff, right? Because maybe things have gotten a little stale or whatever, what have you. You know what I mean? So how can you find, what are some ways to be more in the moment to orgasm with your partner?
Well, when you say orgasm with your partner, are you saying orgasm concurrently? Because that's tricky.
Why not?
I mean, it's great when it happens, but it's not always realistic.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the first thing, is really examining people's expectations about sex, because I think a lot of people think to be present with their partner means they both have to have an orgasm at the same time. Doves will fly out behind them. There will be, harps and music and all of that. And it's, like, we have a lot of Hollywood expectations about what this should look like, feel like. But what I think is really beautiful is when, you speak with your partner and talk about, if there are any dissatisfactions or disparities in orgasmic potential, you can have a conversation about how to navigate that. But otherwise, make room for each other to come when it feels right. And if we're talking about a heteronormative relationship and the man ejaculates first, recover and then get back to business and help your partner get there. If that is in fact where, what is in her potential for the day. Sometimes it's not important to the woman and sometimes it is, and that's okay. And vice versa. Men don't always have an orgasm either, and sometimes that can be okay. So I think, talk to each other, learn about what would be hot for you, what would allow you to feel the most connected with each other so that you can really, excite that and accentuate the orgasm in the moment and help it just rain off the charts. So for some people, that's like syncing up their breathing. For some people, it's dirty talk and give me more, give me more. For some people, it's about making eye contact. For some people, it's about kissing. For some people, it's like, I just need to like go into the zone. And, there's no right or wrong way here. I mean, it's really about what works for each couple.
And it's also, I think, being compassionate towards one another and basically saying, like, how there's like love languages. I feel like this is like sex language, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, look, this is what turns you on. This is what turns me on. I feel like there should be sort of an element to like no judgment, like
Yeah.
no judgment when we say what really turns us on, and like, let's just be free. So what works for me may not work for you, but be cognizant of it, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Well, and just, can I say one thing on that? I
Absolutely.
think people often have this idea of, if my partner is turned on by this, it means I have to do that. That's not true, right? We can always have boundaries. And if our partner wants something that we are not comfortable with, doesn't mean that we have to break through our own comfort to satisfy them. But what I would recommend is to just be really cognizant of the language you use or the attitude that you have about it, to be respectful of any limits that your partner might have and any desires that your partner might have that don't feel in alignment with yours. Because sex is such a sensitive topic and intimacy is such a tender thing to nurture for a couple. So, it can be really quickly something that goes from an opportunity to be vulnerable and connective with each other, even if you decide, okay, we're just not going to do that because it doesn't work for one of us. Or it can go into, oh my gosh, I just made a fool out of myself. I can't believe I said that. And now my partner thinks poor of me. And, I think if we just remember to have an open mind and remember that there is wild diversity in sexual interests, there's a lot that's okay, even if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, totally. I would love for there to be more of this like openness, because really, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no one size fits all. We are living in a society.
Yes.
It's like, just go out there. It's Baskin Robbins. There's many places.
I love that.
There's options. Keep it open.
Yes.
So, okay, now my question has to do more of how emotions play a role into our sex lives. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have a situation where trust has been broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've decided, okay, I'm going to forgive, I'm being empathetic, compassionate. But now you feel like, even though you've forgiven and you love the person, you don't really have the libido anymore. You don't want to
Yeah.
have sex with them anymore, because you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, but you know that by nature it's natural to feel sexual, what have you, and you used to be sexual, but emotionally trust has been broken. So you're trying. So how do you get back to that place where, and I don't think it's like you'll ever get back to that place where it began. But how do you get back to a newer place, especially when both
Mm-hmm.
people are really wanting to, make more more passion, more intimacy in their sex
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And it's really tender because when trust is broken, it really impedes the safety that underlies the relationship. And so when someone's sense of safety feels shattered, it kills off their ability to feel playful, spontaneous, free and without repercussion. And it can really just deaden their vitality. And even outside of the sexual element of the relationship, it may take a long time for them to bounce back into a place where they feel safe enough to light up emotionally and within themselves again. So when I'm working with partners to repair, for example, infidelity and to rebuild trust, a lot of what we're doing is working with the couple to help each other recognize when someone gets triggered, usually the partner who has been betrayed. And so recognizing what are the symptoms of trauma that are coming up when they get triggered, and how can the partner who did the betraying, tend to those triggers in a way that helps them ameliorate the sense of feeling unsafe or feeling uncertain in the moment. And that can be very bonding. So even if trust has been broken, how we repair and how diligently we show up for one another can provide the scaffolding to a whole new foundation for safety and more trust and a revived sense of sexuality and fun and passion. But it does take a while. And frequently the member of the coupleship who has done the betraying or who has done the hurting often gets frustrated by their own shame because they've hurt their partner. So when they see their partner get triggered, they tend to get dismissive of it and, oh, just get over it already. I said I was sorry. Right. And that is just like gasoline on a flame in terms of how it impacts most people's nervous systems. So, we really have to work on building empathy and trust in your ability to cater to the after effects of whatever the betrayal was. And when people can do that successfully, most of the time for a period of time, then they start to see the fruits of that labor show up, and their partner starts to feel safe again. And then they can get back to really having an enriched, more deepened tapestry upon which to lay.
Oh my goodness. That was like music to my soul. I love that. I absolutely love that. That was, it sounds like there's a lot, just from what I'm understanding, just generally speaking, is that it has a lot to do with being very open to one another. I guess it's so would you say to a certain extent that having what it takes to have a really great sex life is really just a matter of just two people being open and two people saying, look, we're both imperfect, but there is a way that we can both understand that the way that you process something and the way that I process are entirely different, but if we can communicate to one another with this certain level of respect and love, then we can be able to maybe learn how to provide that for one another.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say I'm a PACT trained couples therapist, and PACT is the psychobiological approach to couples therapy developed by Stan Tatkin. And Stan often talks about how we need to recognize and attune to each other. And we picked each other for a reason. That's one of his favorite things to say. We picked each other for a reason, right? And he's right, because we unconsciously are seeking out either things that are similar to ourselves or attributes that are similar to the people in our earliest formative years, because that's what we have encoded as love. It's what we understand to be love. So good, bad, or otherwise, that's what we're doing, is sort of recreating these early templates. And when we can recognize that if someone processes things quickly, more quickly than we do, or more slowly than we do, they're not doing it at you. It just is how they are. And if somebody is triggered by XYZ and you're not, they're not doing it to you. That's just who they are. And we are all, again, to quote Stan, we are all high maintenance, and we all have our own recipe of flaws and, incredibly profound, meaningful gifts. And there just is no way to recreate that in a partner. But oftentimes the miscommunication for partners is that we expect our partner to know what we need all the time, to think about it, anticipate it, and go with it. And we forget to be autonomous and to speak up in a way that is collaborative and protecting of, the respect of the coupleship. So I think, when I work with couples, the goal really is to help them get more aligned with each other, feel more attuned, and more open to talking about things in a way that is judgment-free, and recognizing that the coupleship is the strongest bond, and everything outside of that, including, did the dishwasher get loaded on time? Did the kids get picked up? Did you fold your clothes on the end of the bed? The car needs an oil check. All of that nonsense. Those are all thirds outside of our relationship. So even if you didn't get to it, the problem now is it's out there. It's you and I, how do we solve this together? And when we can come back to that, couples stay very much more aligned and attuned, and with the resources to then regulate themselves and really, get excited and thrive together.
I love that. What would you like to see more of in this world?
So many things. Let me think about that for a minute. I would like to see more self-examination and critical thinking. I think that would be really lovely if we all could take a pause and ask ourselves questions like, why do I do the things I do? How did I learn that? Where did it come from? Is it important for me to continue doing that in this way? Or am I open to making some changes? How would changes benefit me or not? I think if we could just get more internally focused in a way that is constructive and not about vanity or status or, things that are transient in the meaning of our lives, then I think we would have a much more robust place to start meaningful conversations with as a culture.
Absolutely incredible. So I always ask my guests to share something that has helped them along their journey that would be of great value for the audience. Is there anything you would like to share?
When you say anything, do you mean anything inside of ourselves, any particular resource,
Anything that you feel like is valuable? Because I do feel like we're all just spiritual beings having a human experience. So, yeah, anything that you may think that's of value.
Yeah, I think, well, there's so many things. There have been lots of friends and family who have been very supportive along the way, and some who haven't, and that's okay. And I would say that I think part of what has helped me get where I've been is, and where I am going and to be who I am, is just really learning in the negative space. And what I mean by that is, recognizing and being grateful for when there is support and resources around you, and there are support and resources around you. And when they aren't, learning how to adapt and develop resilience and holding on to a fortitude within yourself that will allow you to continue seeking out more help, more support, more resources, or ferret a path on your own to move forward through whatever brush might be in your way. Because it's really easy when we see other people moving faster and further along than where we are or want to be, and we're like, I don't understand, I work so hard, or things of that nature. And I think comparison really is dangerous, because we don't know what other people's struggles have been, so we just think they've had it easy, or we're not good enough for some reason, and that's just really not the case. So I would say, if there's been one thing, if I had to boil it down to one word, I would say resilience, because it's about, reaching in and accessing what's outside to pull you forward, even when you feel stuck in the mud.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Well, thank you.
Do you, before I let you go, what can we do for 2020 to have one of the most incredible sex lives ever?
Oh. Oh my God. Well, I think one thing I would invite you to do to have a really incredible sex life in 2020 is to try something new. And it can be anything big or small. It can be something for you by yourself or with a partner. It can be something that challenges the way you have been thinking about sex, read a book about intimacy or something like that. It doesn't have to involve another person or even a sexual act, but I would just say, broaden your horizon a little bit, get curious, and that should start a fire.
Yes, and may it start like one of the best flames, right?
Because yes.
We need that. We're so excited for that. So thank you so very much for
you're very welcome.
Your amazing expertise. It has been a very incredible honor to have you on here. And if you guys,
thank you.
Yes, of course. If you guys have any interest, which I know you will because she is brilliant, reach out. I will be putting her website and her Instagram so you guys can reach out to her, follow her. She's always empowering you to be your most vulnerable and your most authentic, most truest self. And I love that you were resilient enough and still courageous enough to still continue to follow your path, regardless of any external validation or not. So I'm thankful for your soul that you're able to do that. And I'm thankful for those who are watching. And like I said, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Peace, love, and light.